Okay, so this way we have this together. Again, the theme of the lesson, the Messiah's coming, and we have the primary text that we're talking about today is from not Isaiah, but from Psalm 40. The This is more, obviously this is a class orientation, so and it's not necessarily an exegesis, but it's a study of the topic of the area, topical kind of. So that's the way we're going to approach it. So can let me get someone to read that text, Psalm 45 through 10, if you don't mind.
I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. He brought me up also out of a horrible pit of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock, and established my goings. And he hath put a new song in my mouth, even praise unto our God's many, and to our God. Ooh, okay. Many shall see it and fear, and shall trust in the Lord. When we read that, and he had put a new song in my mouth, even praise unto our God. Many shall see it and fear, and shall trust in the Lord. Blessed is that man that maketh the Lord his trust, and respected not the proud, nor such as turn aside to lies. Many, O Lord my God, are thy wonderful works which thou hast done, and thy thoughts which are to usward, they cannot be reckoned up in order unto thee. If I would declare and speak of them, they are more than can be numbered.
Okay. Okay. Where did you
Oh, I
stop?
read the wrong one.
Because I'm looking around and where you're at.
Stop.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking back and forth at where you are here, and I'm like,
Okay, well, you got
some
context.
words
Now
I'm
we
waiting
go.
to hear, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not hearing what I'm listening for. Okay, go. Can you do that again, please? All right.
Many five. Let me mark it. And many, O Lord, my God, are thy wonderful works which thou hast done, and thy thoughts which are to usward. They cannot be reckoned up in order unto thee. If I would declare and speak of them, they are more than can be numbered. Sacrifice and offering thou didst not desire. My ears hast thou opened. Burnt offering and sin offering hast thou not required. Then said I, Lo, I come. In the volume of the book it is written of me. I delight to do thy will, O my God. Yea, thy law is within my heart. I have preached righteousness in the great congregation. Lo, I have not refrained my lips, O Lord, thou knowest. I have not hid thy righteousness within my heart. I have declared thy faithfulness and thy salvation. I have not concealed thy loving kindness and thy truth from the great congregation.
Praise God. And that really establishes who this concept is of Messiah from the perspective that we need to understand historically. So that's why this is why I said this is going to be seen this way. The work of the Anointed One is complex and continual. It is well demonstrated in the biblical text. While the majority of folks consider Christ a New Testament manifestation centered around Mary, and his miracles, his true impact is eternal. This lesson was for these various expressions of Christ in history and in the future. So this is kind of where I was trying to focus our class. It's extremely broad, so I said to myself, well, this is really too broad to have a really concise conversation about. It's going to require some basically narrowing and siloing to a degree of what we're talking about. But let's just get a general concept going here. I'm not sure we're going to follow up. Let's look at his creative ability, and that's why I really hadn't written everything up. So I do apologize. It's easier for me to have it all written up, but I'm just as fine with this framework as if I'm writing on a chalkboard in a typical class type room. So this is fun to me as well. So let's talk about his creative ability. Can someone go and read from scripture first? This is very simple. Genesis chapter 1. when we look at Genesis chapter 1, and let's just look at verses 1 through 3. Someone can read that?
Okay, Genesis 1:1-3 says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light, and there was light.
So we see God creating, establishing his creation. And in what method do we see him establishing this creation?
Verbally, if that's what you mean.
Right, but yeah, verbally, well, through the word, right? Through the word, right? And I'm intentionally making this word capitalized because guess what? We're going to later look at this word in the New Testament as the word as a plate, a person. Okay, so that's why person, place, or thing, nouns. But this person, then we name it, we capitalize it. So frequently, when I hear people talk about or see written the word, if it's biblically referenced about God's word, I'm expecting to see it capitalized. All right. So in this capitalization, we're actually seeing a hint right here that the manifestation of the Messiah, the Christ, not Jesus, but the Christ. So let me make sure I write this down also as we discuss that, because that makes a separate point, right? This is not a discussion of Jesus per se, but the anointed one throughout. I'll just say biblical history. Does that make sense as I'm saying that to you all? What I'm getting at there, and what the focus of that thought is? Wow, it's going the wrong way. Put up this side. Does that make sense? Y'all hear me okay? Okay, I see. Okay. Oh, I see your head then. Okay. So with this, we're talking about the Christ, the creation. Can you all think of another place in scripture where you hear or see indicators of Christ, the creator?
Are you speaking on another chapter in the book or in Genesis?
Not in Genesis, another place in biblical Bible. Go ahead. Anybody else in there that you're thinking about it, or brother Johnny?
Can you frame the question again? I just want to make sure I understand the question.
Can you think of another place where the creative ability or creative side of this anointed one is, I'll just say presented or expressed? I think I used the word expressed. But.
Is it, so would like the miracles that we see him do count, for example, like him shifting water, turning water into wine, or the multiplication of the fish and the bread? Are those the kind of examples that we see?
Actually, those are models of it. So when you say that, you're looking at a New Testament example of this ability to cause things to come into being, right? The water into wine. Some might argue that's alchemy. In certain contexts, they would say, well, he was a chemist, or he was a what do you call it? What you call the guy? Shaman, or all those types of things. So they won't say he's a creator in that case. They might say he's a shaman. But there's one clear place that we've discussed in some classes and lessons, or just, I'm sure you've heard over the period of your years of being in, most of you all, yeah, on here at least, have heard in the period of your time being in church, you've heard examples of this particular thing. So, but let me put that down, because I want to put down your thoughts. So I'm actually, this was part of I wanted to have two things going on. So one is, this thought is healings, conversions, water to wine, and what other thing we see? Healings, water, wines. What do we have? A raising of the dead. All right. So those are examples, but one is directly creation. Anybody? How about Hebrews chapter 1? How about that?
Hebrews 1,
Mm-hmm.
1 through 4.
Well, let's try 1 and 2 first, and then we'll see if we need to go further. Let's go.
Hebrews 1 says God was God who at sundry times and in divers manners spake in time past unto the fathers by the prophets, hath in these last days spoken to us by his Son, whom he hath anointed, heir of all things, by whom also he made the worlds. Okay. Who being the brightness of his glory and the express image of his person, and upholding all things by the word of his power, when he led by himself, purged our sins, sat down on the right hand of the majesty on high.
Yeah, let's stop right there, because I think that's sufficient. What we see here is what in the other times we see the effect of prophets talking, and now in the book of Hebrews, Apostle Paul is saying we've seen directly the Son, his Son, right? Because after Apostle Paul's time period, we're looking at the post-crucifixion period of time. And that is really clear that the Messiah has come. So Paul, at this point, Paul being converted at this point, is now an advocate and a what do you want to call it? He is a teacher and mentor to the people of God over the mysteries of God and the kingdom of God. So in the book of Hebrews is one of the most clarifying books regarding the status and the personhood of the Messiah. Hebrews really summarizes in a lot of areas the wholeness of what the Christ is, who this specific Christ, not the fact that there weren't other people anointed, because there were, but this specific Christ is the anointed one, the one anointed of God, and is actually God. And that's a key element, obviously, to the conversation when we're talking about this. So let's just stay verse 1 through 3 in that conversation. We got a couple important things. He speaks to us through him. He's the heir of all things. Says everything belongs to him then, right? And he also is the, I don't want to use sound, I don't want to sound improper usage of living things versus non-living things, but he's kind of the mechanism of creation. You all see what we're talking about here? He's actually the mechanism of creation. Why is he the mechanism of creation? Good question. Let's ask that. What do y'all think? Why am I saying that? Somebody talking? So why am I saying anybody? Just jump on in, give me your perspective. Let's see what we're seeing here. No, no.
Well, you know how he created the fish when they weren't there, when the disciples out in the water. When he created the bread, made the bread extend itself from enough to feed all those people, when normally there would be like 4 or 5 people to eat a loaf of bread. So he did start the mechanism of people being able to eat or being able to fish so they could pay their taxes. He did start it. Just if they hadn't had the fish, they would have never, they would have been really in trouble with the Romans.
Okay, you are correct. But let me ask you to narrow it down to what you can see here in this particular declaration in Hebrews. And I say by Apostle Paul. I've said to you all many times, but I will repeat. Frequently, the book of Hebrews is disputed, its authorship or its scribe, I guess, because we believe the Spirit of God is the one who writes the word. But the scribe or secretary or typist, if you would, in the modern era, Apostle Paul is arguably the writer or scribe of it. So I say Paul. I believe it's Paul by certain phrases and ways he speaks, even though there is differentiation between some of his other writings and this one. I still believe it's Apostle Paul. But go ahead, though. How about from Hebrews?
Could it be because he is the expression and the image of God, because he is God?
Expression and image of God. And he says something very particular in verse 2. Y'all look at verse 2 carefully. Hebrews 1, verse 2.
Is he appointed heir?
Appointed heir of all things. Not quite what we're looking for.
He made the worlds.
Literally, he declares, and you're right. He declares that it is through his son that he made the world. Do y'all see what I'm talking about there?
Mm-hmm.
And in that, God is declaring that he is the supreme, that Jesus is the supreme. Let there be no mistake about this. Jesus is the expression, and he is the power of God on the earth. Now, this word worlds, when he says he made the worlds, I'm going to type that separately. He made the worlds. Is in the Greek word aeon. Aeon or eons. If you want, it's plural actually, eons, right? And the word aeon, how many know what eon means? Like, eons, or we call it eons. We spell it funny in English, but that's still the right way. It means like all time, all time, all existence. What's the other word that we would say? I.e., the universe. Okay. So when we say he made the worlds, we're saying everything, all times, all existence, everything everything that exists is through him. You all see that? That's right at the end of that verse too. It's really significant. Okay. So with that, we see Christ from the perspective of basically spanning time. And does that make sense? So I'm saying he literally spans time. You cannot pigeonhole Christ to the New Testament period between 4 BC and 29 AD, or right around 29 AD, where he is crucified. Where people say, well, he was born here and he died there. No, Jesus was born then and died at 29 BC. But Christ, the anointed one, is eternal.
Right. So he was here before the God created the earth and still here, and then came down as Jesus and went back home and still here. Eternal.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So, because we have the other text where he said he before the worlds were created. I'm right, my brain is not saying it right this moment, but we have clarification where we have the clarification that he created the world and that he existed before the world began. That he was a lamb that was slain from the foundation of the world. Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Somebody tell me where that is. My brain can't tell me right now. Or when I say word, I'm going to put this other word, eon, in. So we use that thought. Okay. Okay. So anybody got that text for me?
Revelation 5. Wait a minute. No, 13. Wait. Let me find it. Revelation 5.
It is in Revelation.
Revelation 13:8. 13:8.
There you go. Sounds about right. So let's read that real fast, because I like to put that in our record, as it were. All right. Can one of you guys read that? I see it, but can you all turn there for us? Let's read. Matter of fact, let's just say read from verse 5, I guess. Like you started. Go to 5 and go through 8.
Okay. And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindred and tongues and nations.
Wow. What does that say to you guys? Just quickly before we jump on to the last part. What do you all see there?
It's going to be rough for 42 months when that thing is in charge.
40 is going to be rough. Yeah. Well, I have another question for you. If this this beast, which is the reference here, right? The focus is the dragon, which is Satan, but the beast is a manifestation or creation or a person, a function, we often say even a whole system developed by the spirit of the dragon and empowered and propped up by the spirit of the dragon and so forth. Okay, now the power that he has, who's he going to make war with?
God's people.
With us, the saints.
What verse is that?
Mm,
Verse 7.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. 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 And in that you see the function and power of this beast to operate against the saints. And can we all agree on that? That's actually true. That's what we see from the prophet John. Okay. Now I have a question. How can that be if the church is raptured already?
It can't.
No,
Because
it cannot.
if the church is already raptured, then he has nobody to war against.
Exactly. This is the fallacy of a lot of modern day New Testament preachers, and including many Baptists and Black as well, Black and white. A fallacy that was introduced by John Darby in the 1830s and 30s through the 50s, in that range in there, introduced into the United States at that period of time, but it has caught fire in the Protestant church in America, and it is almost sacrosanct in the minds of most Protestants. Baptists in particular are very strong on this, and will actually think that you are a person that has horns in the top of your head if you say it's not true. They are so married to the idea of the pre-tribulation rapture that they are almost offended when you say, you've been living a lie and you've been mistrained and mistaught. Maybe not on purpose, because sometimes we're all echoing what we've been taught, and so we're just repeating what we've been taught. It is a difficult area of study, but it's not that difficult if you're willing to truly invest yourself in the word, because guess what? Can you all see what I see in verse 7? Is there any mystery to that? Is there any ambiguity about that? He is going to make war with the saints. Yeah. And so that's something to then change your mindset to some degree about how you think of life and what you plan in life. You say, well, you know what? I'm planning my life with an idea that the enemy will come against the church, the believers in Christ, the saints of God. So keep that in mind, and then go on. Let's finish up a little bit more. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but go ahead and finish up. I just want to stop you before we went all the way, Sister Alicia.
And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world.
All right. There is at verse 8. That Lamb is, again, a reference to who?
Jesus.
Christ.
Excuse me, Christ.
Yes, I mean, you can say Jesus Christ, but I just want to make sure you're comfortable with the distinction. The distinction is important because Jesus had a birth date. Christ did not. That's very significant. Jesus had a birth date. Christ did not have a birth date. And that is why the idea of him being the lamb that is slain from the foundation of the world is so significant, because then if he's the creative mechanism of God the Father, then he could not have had to be born in the world to exist, but rather he had to be before the world. And he is before the world. All right. And he is literally, we will go to the text if we want to study just his God status and his that whole idea of the hypostatic union between the static between the union between the eternal and the material that Christ represents. That's a whole nother conversation. We won't do that today, but we wanted to make sure we established his existence as an eternal being, and his function is eternal. He's working mechanism from the very beginning, and he's still working mechanism on the behalf of people of God. So that's very important that we are real clear about that. The next thing that was in that is that as the mechanism, as the creative mechanism, he is what you said earlier, the verbal or the word, right? So in John chapter 1, we got that verified, right? Let's just make sure we walk through it as we say, all right, so then he is also the expressed word of God, which is right there in Hebrews. He is the expression. You know, if you read Hebrews chapter 1, right where you were, then we'll go to John. Let's go. Can you read verse 3 one more time? Hebrews 1 and 3. And then we'll go on to John. Somebody find it real quick.
You said
Who
Hebrews
being
1
the
and 3?
brightness of his glory and the express image of his person. Hold on, you say 1 and 3, right?
Yes, sir. 1 and 3. You're right. Mhm.
Who being the brightness of his glory and the express image of his person, and upholding all things by the word of his power, when he had by himself purged our sins, sat down on the right hand of the majesty on high.
There you go. So he really expresses what God is. God expressing himself. God being himself, yes, but God expressing himself. So how do you express yourself? You all see me? Word. God is expressing himself in the word. That's what he does. And then he goes on to take that next step, which we're real comfortable with. I know we're familiar with. I'm going to actually write this text here for the sake of very easy clarity later on when anybody's looking at it. All right. This next one is this. Then we find him as the actual, that'll help, right? Word. I'm going to capitalize it as a noun of God. And that's John, John 1 and 1. Technically, we'll go to 3 for that too. Let's go to John 1 and 1, 3, and then we'll jump out. Someone can read that for me.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.
There you
Same was
go.
in the beginning.
We can go further, but there you go. Don't don't gloss past that. Really carefully evaluate that every time you think about it. I'm going to speak God's word. That means I'm speaking God. I'm expressing God into the world when I speak God's word. We have a lot of things and thoughts that we are typically saying and are somewhat showing this or that about, but in reality, we are not saying anything that value or thing that has, I'll just say salient or let me say transformative power until we're actually speaking words that have transformative power. And that's where God is fully revealed, that he comes through his word, his expression. And there it is. In the beginning was the word was with God, and God was the word. I know the King James says, and what does it say? The last phrase, word was God.
Uh-huh.
Right. But when I'm used to it, back in the day, I was studying it from Greek, from an actual Greek Bible. There is no English. So you had to really like dig through, and it was God, well, theos pros logos. So it was actually God was the word, not the word was God. But it's okay. You know, the English, they change syntax all the time, trying to make it work for the reader. That's some of what happens. But anyway, so God is the word. That is basically saying that this Christ was the word. That's really what you're seeing there. Because God was the word is true, but he's also trying to validate that Christ is God in this conversation. Go ahead, read the next verse. I stopped you.
The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made.
Wow. Again, what does that just validate for you all? Again, we're hearing line upon line, and we hear precept upon precept, and we hear here a little, there a little, and we hear witnesses to each other, even from different time periods and different writers. All things were made by him. That means he's the creative mechanism, right? Fair enough? Y'all see that? All right. All things were made by him. And there was not anything made, and without him was not anything made that was made. There wasn't anything made without him making it. Okay. Then we also have verse 2. The same was in the beginning with God. Does that make sense as well? Again, the lamb slain from what? Foundation of the world. We see that. All right. What else do we see here that's also important is, right, without him, okay. Can you read just the first part of verse 3 again?
All things were made by him,
Yeah,
and
that's
without
good.
him.
That's it. You notice that the creative mechanism has a gender, and therefore persona, or we call it personification, but a persona, although God is a spirit, he's personified in the text as having personhood. Do you all see where we're getting there, or what do you all think of that? Let me just ask a question. What do you think of that? Do you think that that's what that is giving us?
They're saying that he's male, or his spirit is a male spirit. I can't explain no better than that, but that's what it sounds like to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there's an aspect of human, not human, but a being, and the being having a masculine element to that being. Is that fair also?
Yes.
So he's definitely a personhood. Is that fair? Not just a being. He's not the what do you call it? The Borg. He's like they had in the Star Trek fantasies and stuff. He's not some kind of just amoeba or some kind of essence. He's actually has personhood. I guess I want to make sure we understand that this personhood is a part of it, and that's the conversation. The right way to view that conversation, that the personhood of God, or he being, all right, and in him was the life. I'm all the way down here a little bit. All right. Yeah. I'm at verse 4. Okay. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. Okay. So, well, this is 2 things. That's it. All right. So then we have a clarification that he is a being. He is the mechanism of creation. He is God. We can get into the Hebrew and define God, because God is not proper. God is the word God is a very variable term. All kind of God people have had and called all kind of things God. So we really can't just leave it at God. We need to define him more, and we do that only by really going back to Old Testament. You can't really see it separately in the New Testament, because they used God only, and they chose to do that to some degree because of the dominance of the new imperial powers, who used this term God, and they really weren't trying to reference the Hebrews or the Jews language to define things, because they were making at that point clearly the Greek and a little bit Latin, the fiat language of the time, So those were the empires. So things were being written in the fiat language, and therefore that's where they were coming from. All right, so
isn't the personhood the omniscience of him, his omnipotence, his omnipresence, the Trinity? That's all part of personhood. Am I correct?
wow, that's a good question. I don't know. Someone might say the Borg could have all those things, omniscience and omnipotence. You know, if they were, you get the the Trekkie people, they will say the Borg knows everything, and that doesn't make him a person. You know, I think the separation is for God that we're referring to here, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God who gave them his name, Yahweh, you know, Yohevah gave his name, Yahweh. Then, and it's a Hebrew term, and then the other elements that go with that Hebrew term, then it designates him in personhood. And he actually speaks of his son. He calls Israel my son out of Egypt. And you know, he in his language, according to the scribing of Moses, that he is a father. So he definitely designates himself as a personhood, all in the Old Testament, clearly personhood, you know. And then Jesus in his conversations, God the Father, he constantly refers to him as Father. You know, if you were to just go ahead and use what Jesus actually says, then you can see Jesus saying, "But my Father," which is, you know, my Father. You know, and then when you pray, say, "Our Father," he's clearly designating the personhood of him by giving him a relational relationship. Oh wow, I don't know if I can use that word like that, but anyway, that he has relations. That's what designates him really as personhood. What do you all think about that?
Okay, I agree. But he's still one separate person. He is his own person, even though he's part of the Holy Trinity. He's not connected. He is his own separate person, just like the Holy Spirit is his own person, and the Father's his own spirit. I mean, his own person in the Trinity.
When you say own person, what do you mean?
I mean, he's not a mixture, a connected, or what am I say? Some people think he is like you know, sub what I'm gonna say, below God. He's on the, you know, God is here and he's down here and the Holy Spirit's over here. They're all equal. They're all the Holy Trinity. They're all separate persons. They're not just I know he's the son of God, but he's also his own separate person. He's not what I want to say. He is not below his dad.
So when you say separate persons, so there's three gods?
No, three separate persons in the Holy Trinity. No three gods. That's an old argument.
This is
I just had that in class.
Yes. Yes. So I would maybe, well, let me ask you guys, what do you all think about that? But that's what this is class, you know, I'm not preaching. So what do y'all think?
I think there's one God, but it kind of sounds funny sometimes when they say God in three persons to me, because the only one that was a person to me was Christ. I mean, Jesus. But I know that they say it's God in three persons, so I've been trying to understand that. How can you call God a person, or how can you call the Holy Spirit a person? Does that make sense?
Oh, good discussion. Yeah, definitely. I think I have the right answer for you. I'm gonna try, but I want to hear what else you all have to say. Anybody else? Y'all okay? Y'all got it quiet. You're quiet. Okay. Well, okay. Let me address that aspect of of it? That is a great question. And you know what that is? That is also the perennial argument for Judaism and Islam, the other of the two that are monotheistic religions, right? Clearly, the monotheistic concept. Something's wrong with that. Okay, is this? They want to say if God is one, and the Jewish people will quote the prayer. So let's go to the prayer real quick. Deuteronomy, 6? And I love this prayer. I used to say it in Hebrew all the time, at different times, because it is like the most, Deuteronomy 6 and 4. It is one of the most common and very frequently injected prayers in different ceremonies in Judaism. So it's very important to note that God, as he gave to Moses to them to teach them the right things. Okay, he's telling them about you teach these things to their to observe and do these things, and thou mightest fear the Lord thy God, keep all the statutes and commandments which I give thee this day, thou and thy son and thy son's son, and all that, and all the days of thy life, and thy days shall be prolonged. All right, so he rest verse 2. So let's go down to verse number 4. Can someone read for me Deuteronomy 6 and 4?
Deuteronomy 6 and 4.
Yes, excuse me. Mm-hmm.
Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. I'm sorry, let me do it again. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart. Keep going.
Yeah, let me read one more verse. Okay.
Verse 7. And thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thy house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up.
Okay. Yeah,
There.
that's good. So this is very, very, very important and prayer and essential to the thought pattern of the Jewish community. There's nothing wrong with it. The Lord, the first part of it in verse 4 is the part where they have conflict with Jesus being God. Hear, O Israel, Shema Israel, Adonai Elohim Echad. Okay, Akkad Adonai. So I think Adonai is right there. Is saying that he's one master, or just one. Okay, and their argument against Jesus then is, how can he also be God if God is one? All right. And what you all were just talking about is a textbook issue and problem of understanding what is this function of the Messiah coming into these different roles when he what's wrong with this? When God says to teach the children of Israel that God is one, and then we get Jesus coming along saying, "Oh no, teach them that I am also of the Father, and the Father. I'm sorry, I am actually not the Father, but I am God." So that becomes a huge problem, because they're saying there's no way. That's blasphemy. Remember, they kept talking about blasphemy that Jesus was saying. That's the blasphemy. He says he's also God. How can that be? I'm looking at this Hebrew real quick because I want to see something. God, yeah, okay, so Anach, Ana Elohim, Akkad, Yahweh. So they actually use, that's so they're saying that Elohim, Akkad, one Yahweh. And so I know your Bible says Lord, which will give you the idea it's Adonai. It's not. It's not Adonai. It is actually Yahweh. And in the first case when he says, the Lord our God is one. Again, it said Yahweh, Shalanu, or Anakanu, we or our God, Anakanu Elohim. All right, so Yahweh, Anakanu Elohim, Achad, Yahweh. So the word Lord doesn't even exist actually in that text in reality. It's just saying Yahweh is Elohim and he's one Yahweh. That's it. One source. The source God is the one power mighty God, and he is the source God, the one source God. All right. So that is what they are basically arguing, but what they did not understand or did not seem to have the capability of considering is that if God is God, can he not do all things, and can he not express himself in whichever way he chooses to express himself? Remember, Jesus is the express image. Y'all remember that from Hebrews? Is that familiar? Okay, remember that? So that's key. See, that terminology is really key, because he is God, but he's an expressed image of God. Okay, so God can express his image in, or himself, as it were, in different ways. We're supposed to be expressing his image too, isn't that right? That's the reality, right? But Jesus was truly his express image. Jesus was born a flesh man, but he was truly also God, expressed in the world, God expressing himself. So what I learned from, this is back to Dr. A.O. Obadiah long ago, and I thought was one of the most, and it's in his book, Communitarian, Communitarian, Trinitarian, I gotta look it up. Trinitarian Communalism, I think it is. The book is upstairs. But anyway, he expressed in that book so profoundly is that when you hear Jesus say Father God, he's not separating himself from God. He's separating his particular expression from God. He is operating as a son in the earth realm, an expression of God in the earth realm. Even though he is God, he's expressing himself as a son. So if you want to say he's presenting himself from a different perspective, it would be a reasonable conversation to have there. So it is only one God, but he expresses himself. Well, let's use our own life. We are one person, but can we express ourselves in more than one way? I think we all can comprehend that, because your relationship you can be mean and nasty to certain people, and you can be just a bubbly friend to others and be the same person. That's true, right? You can also think about it differently. You can be a father to I could say, males, could be a father to one person or persons, and be a lover to another person, a wife, so basically a husband, lover to the wife. And that's totally different expressions of who you are. You don't express your husband lover, loving lover. I'll put lover. Let's just do that word, lover personality to your children. You love them, but you don't express yourself as a lover to your children. You shouldn't, anyway. And likewise, you're not trying to express yourself as a father to, let's say, your wife, and just goes on and on. As a wife, you express yourself as a lover to your husband, but you express yourself as a mother to children. As a brother, you express yourself as a sibling to your sisters, but you express yourself as a cousin to cousins, and it's still the same person.
So
you just, I can't hear you. Somewhere jumped off. I don't know if you're on mute. Something jumped off. Can you say it again?
I said, so you're different aspects of the same person. Depends on what aspect is expressing itself.
Expression, yeah. Since we have the biblical term expression, we can use it most solidly. Is that this is an expression. Does that work? We all comprehend it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now the others, so Jesus is the express image. All right. So I'm gonna type that in. I'm underneath here just to just kind of validate and fortify that conversation. All right. The express image. I'm going to be a little bit more definite in that the word Christ, the Christ is the expressed to us this image of Yahweh. Okay, so that he's not separate. He's just expressing himself as an image. Did we have an image before? God is a spirit. You couldn't see him, right? But Jesus expressed him as an image. Another case where God is expressed as an image is in what? Genesis chapter 18, right? Is it 18? I'm not gonna go too much into all these things, and I want to touch one more area. Chapter 18, verse number. Okay, here we go. Chapter 18. So look at Genesis chapter 18. Let's go there. That way, huh? Can somebody just read like verse 1, 2, 3, right around there?
And the Lord appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door, and bowed himself toward the ground, and said,
Stop. Hold on one
Lord,
second. Hold on one second. I want you to hear what you just read. What happened in verse 1?
he appeared,
Who appeared?
the Lord.
All right, I'm gonna go where you are. So I'm gonna do the translation in the Hebrew. It says Yahweh. So not just so you clear, it's Yahweh. It's not just some Lord. It's Yahweh. We're very particular in the language because this is what I was saying earlier. The Old Testament gives us some particulars. So Yahweh appeared in the afternoon. All right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yahweh, Yirah, El, Al-Hu, and let me get afternoon. I think it should be Zaharaim, but I just have like fun with the stuff sometimes. They say heat of the day, it might just be heat of the day. So it just used the word kum for heat, hot. All right. And daylight, yom. All right. Kum, yom. Interesting. Kum is high or heat. Yeah. All right. All right. Kum for Maddie and for Denise. Kum is spelled this way. Kum. So that's chet, right? Chet and a mim. Kum. 2 letters. Kum. And it has a vav holem over the on the top there, giving it the O sound. So it is kum. All right. And that means heat or hot. All right. So we know it's the hot, and then yom is day. So kum yom, hot day, hot part of the day. All right. All right. So that means heat, just for your what do you call it, gratification or whatever. Anyway, so he appears. It is Yahweh who appears. It's not somebody else. It's God himself. Who is God? Who's Yahweh? The source. Yahweh, source of life, source of himself. Yahweh himself appears. So we know who comes. And then in verse 2, he looks up and he sees who is talking about. You're talking about Abram at this moment still, I think. No, Abraham. All right. So he's saying, I looked up and I saw 3 people. Do you see that? Verse 2? 3 men?
Uh-huh.
So him is Abram, and he sees three people standing by himself. Says, oh, who are these people with me? Who are these people? And he defined who they were in verse 1 in the, as it were, introductory or overall statement is God who comes to visit him. But now he's breaking down this visit in verse 2. What does this visit contain? What was this visit like? There, verse 2, he starts breaking down what was the visit like. Well, I was there, and suddenly there was three men, right? And he saw them, and he ran to meet them, and at the tent of the door, and he bowed himself toward them, I believe. I gotta move this one. He bowed himself toward the ground and said, "What did he say?" You can read verse 3 for me. I stopped you at that 3.
And said, My Lord, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant.
Okay, and that is actually Adonai, my Lord. Actually, that one is Lord, not Yahweh. All right, so he says, Adonai, don't leave. Basically, don't leave. All right. So Adonai, don't leave. All right. And in this Adonai, don't leave, he then goes on to, and I'm just going to jump ahead here just to make the point here. Let a little water, I pray. Let a little water, I pray for you, be fetched, and wash your feet and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will fetch a morsel of bread and comfort ye your hearts after that ye shall, I can't see, kiss, my Bible's torn right there. My Bible's getting old. For therefore are you come to thy, why, what have you come, why are you here to visit your servant? And he says, and they said, so do what you want to do, as you have said. Go ahead and do the stuff you said you want to get. You want to get some food, you want to get some water for us, you want to do my feet, you want to wash my feet. All these things that you want to do, they said. Y'all notice that they said, they use this term saying they said. Do y'all notice that? Verse 5, and they said, so do as thou hast said. Y'all do all see it. I'm sorry.
I see it. I see it.
I'm sorry. I tapped my head down. I didn't notice that whether you all thumbed up or whatever. All right. And Abraham hastened. He ran into the tent to Sarah and said, hurry up, get some fine meal, need some, he can say, make some cakes, need some dough, get ready to cook, right? Abraham went and did that. He went and went to the herd and unto the young man, and he hastened to dress it. Went to the herd and fetched a calf, tender and good, and gave it unto the young man, and he hastened to dress it. So, and he took butter and milk and the calf which was he had dressed, and set it before them, and stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. All right. So he stood under the tree while God, all three of them, ate. You all see that? You notice this continual clarification that God is three of them?
Yes.
Who came to visit him? Yahweh. And every time Yahweh responds to him, all three are talking, saying the same thing. What would that suggest to you all?
It was the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It's all three of them. I don't know if they were talking simultaneously, repeating, but anyway, it was the three of them. Well, they all three said it, and they said, so do. So the scripture doesn't suggest from that one said so do, and the next said so do, and the other one said so do. So I would suspect, and that's only a suspicion, but based on what we have, is that they spoke simultaneously, just like the angels in the book of Ezekiel, the four beast angels who are in the Merkabah. That is the flying throne or the flying chariot of God. All spoke the same.
They all look the same direction. They all move with in unison. I would suspect in this way, he got an opportunity. This is why this is unique about Abraham, to experience God in all three persons simultaneously. That's pretty rich. And it kind of validates the issue of the Trinitarian expression of God. Because these are men to Abram. The proof that they're men to Abram is that he feeds them a calf and gives them water and washes their feet. What do you all think about that as kind of proof text, and what we call proof text, but as validating the right word, witnesses to the principle that God is three, being established way back here in the book of Genesis, before the Jesus is born. Oh, somebody, I think you got your.
I think he manifests himself as man, because can a spirit hold a bowl or a spoon or a fork? I mean, so he had to manifest himself as human so he could pick up stuff, eat, drink, etc.
Well, yeah, I think it goes
I
to.
don't know. I think of spirits as the other spirits, the ghost spirits. They can't pick up anything. So I'm just saying, how can they hold a bowl or something? Or I guess I watch too many movies. But anyway, I think he manifests himself as men to Abraham, and he would recognize him as men, even though he realized that was Yahweh. Otherwise, how could he eat? I don't know.
I think you have that's part of the conundrum that people have. But see, when people say, how will we bring an offering to God, or the idea of bringing an offering to God, what would God do with an offering? Well, God can receive an offering if you're willing to give him an offering. And people say, well, he can't eat. Clearly, that's not true. Why would mankind be able to eat and God not be able to eat, since he created man and man is made in his image? See, the psychology that we apply is often informed by man's philosophy about God. You know, I heard the other day, Priest was on the radio discussing some issues, and they were being challenged as to whether they still believe in purgatory. And he said, oh, yes, we definitely still, some priests, I'm not sure his office was, so definitely we teach purgatory as part of our belief system. Well, you know, purgatory and the concepts behind purgatory, Dante's hell, is something that was the product of the imagination of a writer, whatever Dante's other rest of his name is. But it's not scriptural. You know, the concept is lost. Even I noted when we were at the hospital and the chaplain there prayed for the family and was praying for Mr. Burnett Thursday, he was praying for his soul when I was about to shut him up and say, stop saying stupid stuff. But I just let him go. And, you know, I did pray after, but later, you know, but the point is he was a good guy, but he's Catholic. And he, through Catholic prayer, engaged it regarding and give his soul rest and let him have peace. If he's not in a place to have peace in his soul, you praying is not going to help him. He's not going to get blessed through purgatory to end up going to heaven. If he hasn't lived a life of faith in God prior to his death, you praying after his death will not get him into heaven. So you can pray for the family, but you can't pray his soul into heaven, which is an error in Catholicism. From my perspective, you know, an error in that they have. You know, they have a lot of good things. That's an error. All right, so here's the point that we're getting at. So then the Messiah then, or the Christ, was manifested multiple times. Here's another example, manifested multiple times before Jesus was born. Does that make sense what I just said, or is that confusing? Does that make sense to everybody? Just give me a thumbs up or something. I'm not sure if there's any questions.
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to just keep going because this is a class. I'm sorry more people didn't jump on with this one. They kind of probably should have. But anyway, so here we go. There's a lot of doctrine here, fundamental orthodoxy doctrine. So then we clearly can see that when you hear Jesus then later, the Christ, you're still talking about God. It's not a separate individual. And the last part I was going to say about that, and let me properly credit Dr. Obaniah, is that he taught in that book, Communitarian Trinitarianism. Communitarian Trinity. I hope I said it right. He's talking about the community of God. What he's trying to say, not about our community, what he's talking about, the Trinity is a community or a communion as an element or concept regarding God, and that God is himself operating in harmony with what he wants to do. The time where you see the expression of Jesus is because there's a necessity for a lamb to be slain. There's a necessity for a manifestation of God, the deliverer, all the key things the prophets said about what he would do and what he would bring to the table and how he would heal. Do the blind see? Do the lame walk? And he asked, when John the Baptist asked, well, should we look for another? He said, well, do the things the prophet said, are things that the prophet said happening, should happen, are they happening? They had to say yes. Then why are you looking for another? So he had manifested what God said because he was to be a manifestation, or let's use this word again, expression of God in the earth. That's all he was doing, was expressing himself, expression of God himself in the earth. Dr. Obaniah pushed this point of functional subordination. Okay, let me type that word in. This a product of functional, I'm sorry. I think I taught some of you all this before. Functional subordination. What do you all think that means? When you hear that term.
Well, one is subordinating or kind of stepping down from their higher role to serve a purpose. So I guess the physical manifestation of Jesus in the New Testament was him stepping down from his role as part of God and his like deity to be physical and submitting to the plan that was established for our salvation. Because we do know that he could have called angels and he could have changed the trajectory, but chose not to.
Wow. That's a good explanation. I will take issue just when you said a part of God, but not because you're wrong for saying a part of God, but because that's it's part of the language that we use around the Trinity. But it's probably errant in actuality when it comes to trying to really clarify, because he's not a part of God, he is God. So, but
Right.
He's operating in a subordinate manner for what you said, for what his plan is. So let's use an example. I choose to go to, I don't know, a European country. And I go there and I say, I get here and they say, well, who are you? And I act as, and I dress as, and I perform as a, I don't know, let's pick something, a circus clown. I go there and I wear the garments, I get a job at a carnival, and I perform as a circus clown. All right. And someone says, so he's a circus clown. And in their view, That is all I am. But the truth is, there's a whole lot more to me than just being a circus clown. But I only went to Europe with the intent of expressing myself as a circus clown. And therefore, their view of me is circus clown. So when someone comes along later and they says, well, he's a pastor, he's a preacher, he's a musician, he's an engineer, he does all these different things. I said, oh, no. You talking about the circus clown? And there's all of the people in Europe will know is, no, the circus clown. But the truth is that there's much more to that individual than just the circus clown. Well, that's Jesus then. Jesus on the earth, and the people are able to comprehend him simply as Mary's son, Mary and Joseph's son, who turns out to be prophetic, so he's a prophet. But they don't have the same capacity to say, we understand him from where he came from, which is a far, far away place, as actually all these, as God himself. All they see is Jesus, they know on the local or parochial type of level. Does that make sense? That'll help you when you have you have a Trinitarian argument with some people, and that's very common now because the spirit of Antichrist is very strong in the language in the land, from both of those two religions I mentioned, as well as from the culture in a broad Gnostic manner. They don't want to acknowledge the Christ as God. And so the Theotokos, and I think I was talking to you guys about that other one, Christotokos. They want to say, well, he was born, the Christ was born, but not God was born, All right, so of Mary, but God was born of Mary because God allowed himself to be manifested as a man and be born of Mary. That's what it is, and that just rubs folks the wrong way. Go back to Deuteronomy chapter 6 and see where they get their rub, at least the religious people, where they get their bad feelings about this idea. All right. What I want to give you on this is this functional subordination. Functional subordination piece, you guys. Let's go to the book of Philippians. Verse 5 through what? 10. Or 11, whatever. You could just keep going, but let's go 5 through oh, I'm just gonna write them all down. Okay, Philippians chapter 2, start at verse 5. Someone can read from there. I'll just write 11.
You said 5 and 5, 2.
5, 2 and 5.
Yeah. 2 and 5. Okay. Wait. Okay. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus.
Hold on one second, verse 5, because I want to make sure you contextually understand. His conversation is, you guys ought to have the spirit and the nature to have love and kindness toward one another, be on the same one accord with one another. Don't fight and strive over things and who's in power and who's that, but rather be humble and meek toward each other. So he's actually pointing them to the church now in Philippi. He's saying, you ought to be like Christ, who didn't care what his title was or what his role was or what this was. He did what his job was as the expression of God in the earth, and never complained that, wait a minute, I'm actually God too. I'm God. He never went there. He could have. One of you all said earlier, he could have called these angels and changed Marnie's. I think you said, Dr. Marnie, she said, he could have changed the course of things, but he didn't do that. He just simply went forward and did his role, or the function that was necessary, that was for a sacrificial lamb to be sacrificed, was why he came. He came to die for our sins, and therefore, pulling rank as God would not have promoted that function. It would have defeated that function. he went ahead and took the role to its all the way to its completion. So that's where we are there. So, okay, go ahead and finish reading. I just wanted to stop and make sure you knew where we're coming from.
Who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men.
There you go. This is really the key text to hypostatic union too. So, but anyway, one of the key texts, I should say. So, hey, he took on this role. He took on this position, even though he was God, and didn't pull rank. All right, go ahead.
Oh. Wait, where's that stuff?
I
Likeness
think,
of men?
like, yeah, he made himself
Yeah,
like a man. Go, okay, verse 7.
Yes.
That's where he stopped. Okay.
And being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. Wherefore God also hath highly exalted him and given him a name which is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, and things in heaven, and things in earth, and things under the earth, and that every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father.
Now look at that language. Look at that language. How I will say, what's the word that language has an element of ambiguity that will throw most people. Well, is it God or is he not God? It's God. Okay, he laid himself in the form of flesh, of men. Yeah, he's God, but God exalted him. Okay, wait a minute. The separation in the personalities or the expression of who is God is enough to confuse most people, I think. I think it's fair. And if you didn't have enough background from the other text, which we just did earlier today, it would be enough to say, well, then God must be separate from him. Yahweh in heaven, that is the Father, must be separate from him. Well, no, he's exalting the name Jesus. Well, then Jesus must not be him. No, the name Jesus and what that will mean to the people in, let's go back to my example, the people in Europe will have to honor the clown Martin for what God what the purpose is for why Martin went to Europe to be the clown. They're going to honor his clown performance, and they need to honor that performance, even though I'm going to bring it up that you all need to honor that performance. I'm my own self bringing up who I am. Why is that necessary? Because when the Lord searched for someone and he couldn't find anyone greater, he then swore by his own self. When he couldn't swear, in the name of this or in the name of that, I swear, there was no greater name than the swear of his own self. Therefore, God has to swear of his own self. He has to use his own self as the high credential because there is no greater credential to be sworn by. So it's a funny, almost somewhat paradoxical circumstance in which Jesus, God, has to swear by Yahweh, God, in order to validate how valid he is, because no one can validate that he's God but God. All the other people would just be other things and ideas. Only one can really say God is God is someone who knows God is God. No one knows God is God but God. That's confusion, isn't it? But that is the truth. That's what we deal with people. That's why in our language and in our sensibilities, folks have a hard time understanding the Trinity. How can God honor himself as God or honor himself as the Son and God at the same time? Well, there's no other name. Where's that text at? When he could swear by no other, I can't remember it right off the top of my head. So I'm gonna look, see if my phone will tell me real fast. And I don't have a concordance in front of me, which is the old way that I would use it, you know. Yeah, this is right here. Let's go to Hebrews 6. Hebrews 6 and 13. What that is, as a result of many years of study and also listening to my father, years of preaching, you hear the word, you know, you've heard the word, and you have to just go find it. And that's what you do. But Hebrews chapter 6, verse number what, 13? What does he say? In context, and I know that's challenging. Hebrews 6 is challenging faith, going on to the greater knowledge and principles of God. For when God, okay, verse 13. You all see that?
Yes.
Okay, for when God made promise to Abraham, because he could swear by no greater, he swore by himself, saying, surely blessing I will bless thee, and multiply I will multiply thee. See, this principle, and it's illustrated way back, is that ultimately, when you're going to validate or credential something, you have to have a higher authority to credential it by. All right. You can't just say, well, I'm saying it. Well, who can you say it? There's no one else to say. There's no one higher than God. There's no greater authority on the subject than God. So, you know, like I quoted Dr. Obadiah, I mean, because I could quote someone higher, but when it on something there, but when it comes to God's authenticity, no one can swear to it like God can swear to it. That's where people get lost. And Christianity just literally perplexes people's thinking and they get lost. This is a humongous issue as we're talking about this creative aspect or creativeness and this nature of the Christ, the Messiah. Well, any questions about that part?
No, I'm just going to say that's why I said at the beginning that he was omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent, because no one could see before you were born and your death all at the same time simultaneously. Or no one could be everywhere at one time. We may be to the left, on the east side and the west side, but we're never at the east and the west at the same time, or have all power like that. So that's why I said the personhood was all three of those.
Okay. I think it's a valid concept and thought through. Precept really is the right term, but anyway, yeah. Any questions about anything we're working on here? Okay. Well, it's 2:00. I think I was going to talk shepherdship. I have this whole little, my big bunch was on shepherdship. But maybe we'll do it. God willing, next month. Maybe we'll do shepherdship next month. Aspect of the Messiah. I just have to not move my little notes and stuff and all that fun stuff. And maybe I'll make sure I put it in the actual document because it's not in the document yet. It scribbles. But I think this is enough to try to digest. What do you think, Brother Johnny, what we're talking about today and the aspects of it, you know, what do you think?
Well, you're saying that God can express himself any way that he wants to, and that God sent God to save us, and that even though you can separate Christ from Jesus, I guess the Jesus aspect was God expressing himself in human flesh in the earth so that he could be amongst men. And so basically, I just think that God can do all things.
I think ultimately that one statement summarizes it. And that is so hard for people to comprehend because they want God to fit within a physical, dimensional context that they understand. And he's like, no, you don't get to do that. God, you know. One more thing I'll throw at you guys regarding the Christ and his creative ability is and this was not on my screen, wasn't on my radar, but it just while you just said that, you made me think about it. You helped me think about it again. I was put that way. You didn't make me, but I thought about it. With the grace of God, Holy Spirit, is First Corinthians. 1 Corinthians. Wow. God is constantly doing this. This is hilarious. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Let's just read a couple verses there. I'm just going to throw it in because it'll be when y'all with you all's. Oh, this is a perfect example of the functional subordination. Perfect. I'm going to throw it in here. All right, 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Somebody read there for us. And that'll be wonderful.
First verse or the verse.
Yeah, start at the first verse. Definitely, that context is worth doing it in there. Yeah.
Moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant how that all our fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea.
So
And
this
did
is, wait, hold on one quick second. I'm throwing this in here quickly. Note, first thing is you see that baptism was sanctified and or validated before Jesus even came, or before John the Baptist even came. They were all baptized then. All right, go ahead.
and did all eat that same spiritual meat, and did all drink the same spiritual drink. For they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ.
Do you all recall that they had the rock that was in the wilderness and they were thirsty, and the Lord told Moses at one point to strike the rock, and water came out for them to have a drink. So basically, God just made the rock turn into a water fountain, and everybody could walk up. Could you imagine kids playing like they play at a fire hydrant, and they're all running in back and forth in the water but the water's coming out of a rock. All right, look at God. The rock just becomes a water fountain or fire hydrant. Maybe I'm just making up my imagination of what it would look like, and they all had water and plenty of water. And they did eat the same spiritual meat. They did eat that bread when they came out. Bread, and in this case, it was water, but it was the same idea of a communion or Passover, like type of idea. It was the advanced one. Bread and the water, or the meat and the water, and food in the water is the best word. And they were baptized, and that was spiritual rock. And then we know that at one point God said to Moses to speak to the rock, and Moses did instead, under frustration, hit the rock. All right, right. So what does that show us? Christ in functional subordination again. He became a rock this time. That's another example of him just manifesting in a different way. Expressing, let me use the same language, expressing himself in a different way. In this case, he expressed himself as a rock. Water fountain rock. Life fountain rock. How awesome is God? No? Come on. How awesome is God? I mean, come on. People that don't understand that. The roots of our Christianity, our orthodoxy, is based on these principles of truth. These are the things that make us different. These are the things that cause us to have faith in God and know God. So, okay, any questions about all that? Or any of that, I should say? Any of that? No? Okay. Well, like I said, it was already 2:00 and it's 2:10 now. And I think this is a sufficient amount of study for you guys to review, pursue. I will send you all this portion, email this portion to you all. I think I will probably send it to you all as others. I will tell them about it if they want. They can get the video, and then they can see it as well. And I guess I could send them the type too, but I just don't want to send it out just general willy-nilly, because people are not going to understand what we discussed by looking at this, just looking at the piece of paper. So, okay, so after they review the video, then I'll give them the thing. Okay, so if that's it, then what do you think, Miss Marnice, Dr. Marnice? What do you think that we can close it on this note? I think we got the subject part discussed. Bernice, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Okay. What do you think about that? Are we good enough for today?
Yeah, I think so. I think we made it. Yeah, I think so.
We made good progress here. Maybe we will continue this to complete this conversation, God willing. If it's His will, we'll do it. And we'll aim at continuing, and we'll do this next part about His ministry and shepherdship, because that was where my teeth were sinking in onto that, but I didn't feel like we were in a position to do that before we built this foundation. So we did put a foundation down today. So thank you guys so much for listening and studying. Please look over this and study it, be more clear about it. And maybe we'll even discuss it in church services. Maybe even somehow you all can do some expression of it or break some of it down for the congregation at a later date. And we'll talk about it more, because we have to start making our studies, our different efforts in growing the doctrine and fundamentals of to the body of Christ more prevalent and sound and more what's the right word? Promoted. I'll use that word for right now. Amongst the body of Christ, it should not be just a small segment. But you all are teachers, as well as some, your teachers and other folks who are in the audience need to know these foundations very solidly and very clearly, because the challenges are out there now. So, all right. Well, let's pray and close. Do you have anybody particularly to pray, or I could just name someone if you want?
Oh yeah, I thought you were gonna pray, or if you wanted to turn off the recording, or were you gonna capture the prayer?
Oh, okay. Well, we can do that. Oh, I apologize. I forgot about the recording is on, and there is a lot of